Up goes what? Morning. Thank you for being here this morning. My name is Rich Olson. I am the Director of Legislative Services. With me today are Ann Ellison, the Assistant Director, and Doran Burrell, the Staff Attorney with us. Thank you for braving the weather. This is just a taste of things to come, right? We're here today to talk a little bit about the resources that you have available to you through the legislative website. We're going to discuss a little bit about the status of the code and what documents and books we have available on our website now, what versions of the code are official and what aren't. We're going to discuss the detailed process of legislation, just in is detailed, but we're not going to go into too much detail on it. So there's some terms that you're going to need to be familiar with if you're not already. We'll talk about some of those. We're going to discuss the constitutional requirements and the final steps of turn a piece of legislation into the code, and what omissions could be fatal to a bill and its enactment. We'll also talk about steps in the process that could lead to certain discrepancies. We're going to talk about in brief, some Supreme Court decisions that deal with the code and its interpretations of the code, how they're instructed this process and what they might mean. We're also going to show you a lot of the tools that we have available. Some of you may be familiar with the legislative website and some of the things that we've had on there. We spent the last year during the pandemic being quite busy going through and adding a lot of stuff. So, let me see. The wrong one? Oh, there we go. So some of the things we're going to talk about today relating to how you might need to access this information and why you might need it. You may need to find a statute and what it said on a certain time, or when that language was changed and what it was changed to at that time. You may need to determine the language of a section when that language became effective. That can be very important in many instances. There may be questions on what happens when there are two bills that were passed during the same session that reflect the same code section. We're going to talk about that and how we deal with those on our website. What evidence is there of legislative intent? We're not a legislative history state. The court doesn't use that a whole lot. We are typically just the plain language of the code, but we do have that available, and it is available to look at it from time to time. Now, some of the things that we have on the website, we want to talk to you about the what's on the website and how that can help you. A lot of these things that we have on the website, such as the code, bill status, those have been around for a long time. Some of you may be very familiar with that, and bill tracking and that kind of thing. But as I mentioned, the Joint Committee on Government Finance, the different agencies within that, we spent during the pandemic a lot of time scanning in thousands of documents for the acts. We have almost all of the acts back to 1863 now online, available for you to search. We've spent a lot of time going through all of the enrolled bills. We've got back to the 60s, I believe now. As of today, we have back to 1960, all of the enrolled bills online available for you to search and look through. And we are working on going through the rest of the years. That's, as you can imagine, that's a large project. We're working in conjunction with the Secretary of State to get the official copies of the enrolled bills that they maintain and scan those for everyone to access. We've also we're starting to talk with the House about working on getting the daily journals online. So there are a lot of projects that we're going to get more resources available to everyone. Now, one of the things we wanted to do is just go to the website, in case you're not familiar with it, and just give a brief overview quick, and that will be on the side screens. Where, if on the legislative website, we have tabs along the top, including bill status, current code, and under the what is it called, the official state law, we have the current code, we have the enrolled bills that are in that, and we have other various things available. So today we're going to go through these and help familiarize you with what's there and some of the new things that are there and how you can go from one to the other to find exactly what you're looking for. Under the state law tab, you can find the acts of the code, the current code, the acts, a scan of the complete West Virginia code as it was recodified in 1931. Under the bill status page, you can find information from all the way back to 1993 for every bill that's been introduced, including the ones that have passed, obviously, and all their amendments, floor amendments, anything that was officially submitted. It will all be on there for you to search. And we have, so we have all that information available to you. It's just sometimes it's a matter of knowing where to look, and we're going to hope today to help show you that. Through that, you can search by bill number if you know the bill number, but we also have various options. You can search by the code section. You can search under subjects to try to help narrow down, or if you're not quite sure where it falls, there are lots of different available options for you. So one of the things we wanted to talk about today is the Code of 1931. In 1931, the legislature recodified the entire code of West Virginia, and that is the last time that has happened. So now every bill that is enacted amends the Code of 1931, and that is actually found in the title of each bill that is introduced. It will say a bill to amend and reenact Section 221 of the Code of West Virginia in 1931 as amended, or to add a new section to that. One thing to keep in mind, and we'll discuss this a little more, is that there is no official version of the West Virginia Code. Lexis and Mickey's do provide their bound versions of the code, but that is not actually an official version. They work with the House Clerk's office to get all the bills as they're passed during session, and then they provide the updates to their volumes of the code. But those are not actually official versions of the code. The closest thing we have to an official bound version of the code are the acts themselves. However, as we'll discuss today, the enrolled bills control over that if there's a discrepancy, but the acts are the only official bound version. We do provide the code on our website, but that's not even an official version of the code. We do maintain that every year. We worked to get that updated. We have a new system in the process where we update the code with the different versions of the bills that are introduced and are enrolled and passed and signed by the governor. But of course, that's not a perfect process either. One thing that I'll tell you all, and some of you may know this, we rely on you guys too. If there's something that you're looking through the code and you know that there was a bill that passed last year, but language is missing, please let us know, because like I said, this is a process that we put in place and we try to do our best, but we're human, we miss things too. So it is often I say that, but usually we get information from the public. Somebody says, hey, this is supposed to be up there, but it's not. So if you ever come across something that you think should be on the website, but it's missing, please let us know. That can help us keep everything up to date. We're going to explain in more detail today documents you can rely on that have the most recent and accurate version of the code. How can you determine what the text of the code was at a given date in the past? And all that information is available on our website. And we do have the code of the Code of 1931 is now available on our website. So if you're curious as to go back to all the statutes as they were enacted at that time, you are welcome to do that. It happened in 1931, and that was one of the harder ones to make sure that we got everything scanned in correctly, because obviously we don't have a lot of those available anymore in book form. So that was some great attention to detail was paid to make sure that was right and readable for everyone. At this time, I'll turn over to Ann to talk some more about terminology and things to look for in the process. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name's Ann Ellison, and I'm the Assistant Director of Legislative Services. I'm glad to see everyone here today. See a lot of friendly faces, so I hope you guys learn a little bit today. As we get started with the presentation, I want to talk to you about some terminology that you're going to probably hear throughout the presentation, just so you're familiar with it if you don't work with legislation that often. The enrolled bill is, oh, what? Oh, sorry. Oh, wait. Sorry. So the enrolled bill is the final official version of the code. It is the version that has been signed in the House and Senate, has gone to the governor's office, been signed, and is the true official version. We kind of consider this the top of the pile when it comes to what we can rely on as far as what the statutory language is. If you hear the term act, that just refers to any bill that has passed both the House and Senate. We're also going to be talking about the journals, and there are a couple of different journals. There's a daily journal, and there's something called a bound journal. And those records are a daily, they record all of the action on the floor throughout a particular day, and then they're compiled. And everyone from a particular session, they're all compiled together. The journal details the movement on the floor of everything that occurs, so you can see even as little information as when the floor session started, and then you can see everything that has occurred in chronological order. And this is going to be important. I'll explain later. The acts of the legislature are, of course, they are a bill or a publication that is created by the House clerk in every year, and they contain all of the enrolled bills from that particular session or year. He has the authority to create that and put that together. So that's basically the only official publication of the code that comes from the legislature. And has typically been available to everyone. So this is a flow chart that I created, and this isn't the entire set of steps as to how the bill becomes a law, but this is going to go through the steps that we're going to talk about a little bit more today. And as you can see, I start here with the bills having passed both the House and Senate. Once they pass both the House and Senate, the bill goes to the Enrolled Bills Committee. And the Enrolled Bills Committee is any other legislative committee, but it is a committee that reviews the enrolled bills and signs off on them. So there's a chair in both the House and Senate. They will sign off on the bill prior to it going to the governor's office. Once that step is complete, the bill will then go to the governor's office. It's going to go to the governor's office, and then he will have the ability to do several things with it. Obviously, to sign it, to veto it, and to allow it to become law without signature. After this step is complete, the bill will then be filed with the West Virginia Secretary of State's office. They are the official keeper of all of the records, all the law of West Virginia. So the actual physical bill, the enrolled bill, is kept at the Secretary of State's office. And just want to say thanks to them, because we have worked very closely with them to be able to get all of those enrolled bills. Literally banker's boxes full of paper bills, from years and years ago, to be able to scan all of them and put them online. The next step is that the bills will then come back to the House, and the clerk will have the ability to start compiling the acts for each year. He will, at that point also, the bill also comes to our office. It comes to Legislative Services, or the Joint Committee on Government and Finance. We have an IT division and our legal division both work together to make sure that the online code is updated and all of that, all that information is correct. Okay, so I'm going to get a little bit more into what happens in the governor's office and the process of transforming a bill into a law. So a crucial step in the process is that the bill goes to the governor's office. Of course, Article 7, Section 14 of the West Virginia Constitution provides the requirement that the bill be presented to the governor for signature or veto, or to allow it to pass without signature. There is a case called Charleston National Bank versus Fox from 1937, and the bill was a dispute, or the case was a dispute between the Charleston National Bank as an executor of an estate versus Fred Fox, who was the state tax commissioner at the time. And this bill, the main issue in this bill is whether or not the bill had gone through the appropriate steps to become a valid enactment. And in that particular case, the court was able to look back, look at the journals, look at all the information about the passage of that bill and all the steps, and found that it had not been validly enacted and nullified it as a result. So obviously, all of these steps are hugely important and can result in a statute, being nullified if they're not followed. There also been, just as a side note, there's also been other cases in which errors in post-legislative process have invalidated state laws. So again, it's a crucial step. Now, what I'm going to show you here is, and if I'm showing you screenshots now, we haven't necessarily gone through all these on the web, but we are going to do that throughout this presentation. So you're going to see sort of screenshots, but we'll show you this stuff in action. So this is an actual example of an enrolled bill, of the final page of an enrolled bill. And the example that I have up here right now is when a bill has just been, simply been signed. And as you can see, all of the appropriate signatures, the enrolled bill committee signatures, are on this enrolled bill. It also says that it is approved by the governor. You'll see that note. And I just want to point that out because that's important as we get into what can happen in a vetoed bill. So that's what I'm going to talk about next. So what I'm showing you here is a screenshot of what occurs, what happens on the final page of a bill that has been vetoed. As you can see, this bill, it's been signed by the governor, so that might be a little confusing, but it's been signed by the governor, but it states that it's been disapproved. So if you're researching any enrolled bills, just be mindful that is indicated in the bill. If the bill has been vetoed, of course, the bill will go back to the legislature to address, and the legislature may attempt to override that veto. The legislature can do that by a simple majority, and if it decides to do so, and it overrides the veto, the clerks will affix a statement on the back of the enrolled bill that states that the bill has been overridden. Just essentially, the House, the clerk of the House and Senate are going to both say, yes, this bill has been repassed. Now, the bill will have to go back to the governor's office at that point, but it won't be signed. However, there will be indication that the bill has actually been received in the governor's office, even though it hasn't been signed. So this is what I'm showing you here. There are stamps on the enrolled bills that show when it has been received by the governor's office. Okay. So this is the next example of things that can happen when the bill goes to the governor's office, and that's just that the governor may not sign the bill, and he may just allow it to go into law without signature. And of course, if he allows it to go into law without signature, it's going to look like this. But again, there should be some indication of when the bill was received in the governor's office. The only other thing that I want to point out is that some of these processes for the stamps and the attestations and these different things are new creations. So the further back in time that you go and are researching these enrolled bills, maybe the less of a likelihood you are going to be able to see these particular steps. But they are in place now, and they're obviously important to have in place in case there's any confusion or dispute about a bill. So I think that's it. So I'm going to pass you along to Doran, and he is going to continue.
I'm going to use the website to demonstrate a couple of things, so I'll just sit here and drive the bus from this direction. As Ann said, the official copy of the bill signed by the governor, it goes to the Secretary of State's office. If you ever needed a copy of an enrolled bill that's certified, then you would go to the Secretary of State's office for that. In talking with one lawyer as we were discussing this presentation, he said that as a practicing attorney, where the subject text of a statute is the key issue in the case, he would not walk into a courtroom without a copy of an enrolled bill in his pocket in case there got to be any dispute whatsoever about the text and whether the bill was properly enacted. So you can find those with the Secretary of State's office online. There's a couple of ways to find them. First of all, many of you are already familiar with our bill status pages, where you can go look up a bill that is either in progress currently or the history back. We've got, we can't take this database back as far as some of the other stuff because a lot of the underlying information simply isn't available. But for the past several decades, you can go and look into bill status. It's important, though, if you look here, you'll see on the title page, it says which year and session this is. You've got to go in and select which year you want to look at, or also if you wanted to look at a resolution, you have to use these pull-down windows that are over here in these selection boxes. So I can put in another year, such as 2018, pick regular session, and I can go look up a bill from a regular session. It's important to, one thing I got to remind people, if you're using this page, it's important that you hit this submit button over here, because right now we're still in the default of the 2021 third session. So hit submit, and it now shows that we're at the 2018 regular session, and I can enter a bill number. It tells me that House Bill 2448 doesn't exist in that session. I can look under here. There's several options to search by. I've just selected completed legislation. So here are all the bills that passed during that session. Increasing salaries of state employees, that sounds interesting to me. I'll check that out. Put that in there, and I see details about the bill. Amendments, a complete history of what happened during the its process through the legislature. But if you look in this section right here, where it says bill text, you'll find a few versions of the bill in its process, and then it says signed enrolled version. Hit the PDF, and you can see the complete bill. Scroll to the end, and I see the governor's signature, as Ann has showed us. There's also another way. If you don't want to go through all of those steps, We also have a complete listing of enrolled bills back to 1960, I believe now, and we're adding more as the weeks go by. If you look under state law and go to West Virginia Code, you'll see just below the title, there's this bar with these 3 options on it. The one on the far right is enrolled bills. And each of these black bars represents a year, going all the way back, as I said, to 1960. So I can go back to 2018. I see there were 2 sessions that year. I can hit regular session, and I now get a list of all the bills. That's if you know the bill number. I'll show you in a little bit how to find it, a bill when you don't know its number, how to locate its number, and then you can find the enrolled bill or the bill history. Any questions about this so far? It upside down. We have some impressive new technology here in the house, and we're happy to show it off, but it is a bit of a learning curve. Again, it's just to show you that the completed bills can be found from the bill status page. Now, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about timing of enactments. This has been an area that has brought a lot of questions to us, and it's also been an issue that's been subject to litigation and considerable anguish. A few years ago, there was a lot of discussion about a particular bill involving water quality standards, and there were 2 versions, 2 different bills passed in the legislature that same year, amending one statute. One bill amended part of the statute, and the other bill amended a different part. And the question became, well, what is the actual law here? Back in 1892, this is not a new issue. Back in 1892, there was a question about passage. If you'll see, bills can be passed, can be made effective from the date of passage or from a default period of 90 days. Somebody says, how do I know when passage is? Is that when the governor signs it? And in this particular case, with the default 90 days, which is provided by the Constitution, all bills normally take effect 90 days after passage. Passage means when it clears the legislature, when both houses have voted to approve it for passage. There's also a question that comes up sometimes. A bill has 90 days to passage, but there's a date inside that bill. It says the Department of Motor Vehicles shall by May 1st of this year do blah, blah, blah. Well, how can that be a mandate if that bill doesn't become effective until June 28th? The bottom bullet point there shows you cases in which shows you that the Supreme Court has ruled a statute speaks of when it was taken into effect. So earlier dates prior to the effective date are, to the extent that they mandate any action, those are a nullity. One question that we often get up to us is, well, how can a bill become effective from passage if the governor has 10 days to sign it? Doesn't it pass when the governor signs it? Well, in that case, when the governor signs it, it actually relates back to the date of passage. So. To determine the effective date, you can find it in bill status. We're now printing that, adding that to the bill status page. If you look in some of the different fields on the page, one of them says last action, and that shows you where the what date it was. As I said, there's a default 90-day period. The legislature can make a bill effective from passage, or they can select a date. And in the past year, we've had bills go into effect on July 1st, December 31st, and we actually had one bill pass last session that won't become effective until July 1st of next year. Often the effective date will show up at the top of the history information on that page, all the steps that the bill has gone through. When the effective date is not listed, one thing you can do is go through that bill history. And in this example that I've shown, posted up here, if you look near the bottom of those list of items, it says effective from passage, roll number 242. That's a roll call vote. If they want to change the default 90-day period, the legislature has to take a roll call vote, and it will be reflected. In this case, it says effective from passage. Here's an example where they decided that it should take effect on July 1st. It's about the fourth line from the bottom there. If you don't see that in the bill history, then you know it's the default period, the 90 days. Now, getting back to what I was discussing earlier, what happens when two bills pass on the same day or the same session of the legislature, sometimes on the same day even, and they both are passed and signed by the governor? What language controls? There's the case of Wiley versus Toppings, in which the Supreme Court more or less adopted a rule which they called a black letter principle that is used in many states, sometimes called the last passed rule. And the idea is that if there are two legislative enactments on the same issue, on the same section, the legislature is presumed to have knowledge of its enactments, and the last passed is, if there's no conflict in the text, the last pass is the one that controls. And I mentioned that in I believe it was 2018, we had the dispute about two bills involving water quality standards. Rather than litigate it, there was a request for an attorney general's opinion. That's cited up here at the bottom. In that case, they also mentioned the so-called last pass rule. They discussed the question of what does it mean? Do these two things actually conflict? And in that case, the final conclusion was based not on which bill passed first, but what was in the title. There was a defect in the title of the bill that was the basis for their conclusion. So we've got this last pass rule, this Wiley versus Toppings opinion. Does that mean that we can just say, we in the legislature, we as legislative services, can adopt the last version? Well, no, because only courts can actually say what the text of a bill is. In fact, the courts have said the legislature cannot interpret its own acts. Likewise, as attorneys for the legislature, we can't tell you that one versus another is the law. So what we do is we put both of them up there when this occurs. You may see that sometimes when you're looking at our code. When it happens, we'll put both in the text of the law in our West Virginia Code section for the section that's at issue. And it's the first one is prefaced with a note. If you can see, there's some red text there that tells you there was more than one. The most recent one we list first, but then we will go on down through the statute, down through the page, and you'll see another bit of red text. This introduces the next version, and this was the one that would pass first. So you'll see a brief annotation like that. Any questions about that? Okay, Ian alluded a little bit on how legislation is turned into code, what process we do. Once a copy of a bill is presented back to the clerks, whether it's been signed or not signed or vetoed by the governor, it gets scanned, and we try to get it online, but as part of the enrolled bills. But we also take and strip out the initial prefatory language of the bill section and extract each section of the code from the bill, and we put them on our website in the state code portion of our website. It's a very intensive process. It used to be done by one person who would do it, who had lots of different duties, and he would do it when he could get to it. And if you're familiar with, 5, 6, 10 years ago, the code online was, it was worked on when the guy could get to it. So there was often long delays, and there were numerous omissions. We're now trying to get these things online on the day they become effective. As I said, in some cases with when it's made effective immediately from passage, there'll be delay because we're not going to put them up before the governor signs it. But otherwise, we are now working to get the code online on the date that it is effective. All right. Rich had previously mentioned some of the basic issues, the basic areas of our website for bill status and the bill code. What we're going to be talking about next involves some other areas of the website. It's difficult when designing websites trying to figure out where to put everything in. And so I'm going to just introduce you to a few of these areas, and then we'll go into a little more detail about them. So as I mentioned, we have the bill status page, which many of you know. There's the state law tab, which holds the code, the acts of the legislature, the full text of the code of 1931, as well as the constitutions. There's a couple of other tabs I'll make you aware of. There's the joint tab, and under that, there is a selection for public information. That can lead you to the stuff from our Office of Reference and Information, discusses several of the publications that they make available. We actually have a page that lists the publications. Unfortunately, it's not listed on this page. To get to that, you go to this, look along the top. There's a tab called Educational, and go down, and you'll see Publications, which includes the West Virginia Blue Book, but it also has links to the Acts of West Virginia, and they're organized by year and volume. And then further down, you can find the journals of the House and the Senate, including the bound journals. And in just a bit, we'll talk to you about what's the bound journals are and how they're different from the daily journals. Also, those of you may have watched the proceedings. There's this, on the main page, there's a link to streaming video and audio. That's for that's refreshed for each day of the legislature when they're in session or having meetings. And you can see lists of meetings that you can either tune into for an audio version or in some cases get a video. Let's see if we can see. And our session here today isn't being broadcast on YouTube, but if it were, it would be streamed out live. There is a section over on this right side for archived video. The Senate archives all these video recordings that it makes of committee meetings and floor sessions. The last thing that we'll show you, another area on this website, is down here. It says bulletin board. If you go to bulletin board, it again will tell you, give you a listing of what's going on in the legislature at that time. But down near the bottom on the left is a link to Journal Archives. This is where you can find the journal, the daily journals for each day of each session. They're organized by year and by session. And that's about all I will explain there, except to show you that. Oop. So now that I've shown you all that, I mentioned about finding how to find enrolled bills. What happens if you don't know the number of what bill you're looking for? To do that, you can go to the acts of the legislature, and you can actually look in one of the volumes. So for instance, if I go to 2019, there's an index, and if you can go to one of these bills, and at the header, or the heading for each chapter, which is each individual bill, it will tell you what bill number it is. So if you happen to know about a particular act that has occurred, or it's been linked to you by a statute, the example that I'd like to give, if I get back here. This is on the enrolled bills page. If you look at that page for a particular statute, you'll see over on the right a list of bills that have affected that statute, that have amended that statute, or touched it in some way. So it's on the right-hand side of the screen. Let me blow that up a little bit. And you'll see that there are a list of bills that have amended or created, or in some cases repealed this statute. And those are all hot linked. And the hot link will take you to the enrolled bill affecting that statute. Another situation you may occur, we don't have all those bills listed yet and hot linked, but we're working on taking them back. But if you're looking at your Mickey's or your West volume of the code, or you go on to Lexis and you look up a West Virginia code section, you may get something like this as an annotation. It lists years and C, which stands for chapter number. So, unfortunately, Lexis doesn't have them go all the way back. We don't have everything highlighted, but you can look. For instance, there's 1986, first extraordinary session. You can take that information and then go to the acts and look up, here's the 1986 First Extraordinary Session, Chapter 14, and in the heading of the bill, it says, this was House Bill 146. So it's a little bit roundabout process, but if you at least know the year and the session and the chapter, you can go find that, and then that will lead you to the text of the bill. It's right there in the acts, but you can also use that to get to the enrolled bill.
Thank you, Dorn. I'll take over briefly here. We'll just talk a little bit about legislative history and legislative intent. As I discussed briefly earlier, the courts in our state will usually just treat the language as for what it is. They will look to the language of the wording of the statute and attempt to discern a clear meaning based on what it is. However, there is this case that we have up on the board, Appalachian Power Company versus State Tax Department, where it's only when there's a clear ambiguity within the statute where the courts might look to the history that we do have. We don't have a whole lot of history available. In some states you'll find where they have every little bit of committee meetings and all the details of everything that's happened on a bill. We don't keep that kind of stuff. But we do have available to you the floor amendments that were made in the committees and that kind of stuff. So if it would be a case where you're trying to look at some legislative history and maybe to bring in doubt the language of a code section for the court, you can look to these things. Of course, this case does say that they'll look at these things skeptically. So, I wouldn't rely on it too much, but we do have available for you how to look at this information. So, show you a little bit here. And one way you can go directly to bill status if you know the bill number. But one other thing that you can do, say you know the code section and you want to see where it's been amended, you can go to the code section itself. And something that's come up in the last day, legal holidays. The governor, of course, was kind enough to grant state employees the half day the day before Christmas Eve and the day before New Year's Eve. But anyways, so one of the things, if you know the code section that you're looking for, you can go to the code section on our website. And as Dorn showed you, on the right side of the bill over here, you do have all the signed bills. So this section right here is section 221 relating to legal holidays. And here at the top on the right side, it gives you all the instances where there's been an enrolled bill affecting the section. However, if you go further down on this, you will also see bill history for this section. And this will have this for all the bills, all the code sections. Of course, when I say that, we only go back to 1993 in terms of what we have online for the bill history, floor amendments, that kind of stuff. But all you have to do is click on any of these right here, and this will take you directly to that bill status page. You scroll down, and here you'll have all the information that was associated with that bill. Now, here, of course, we don't have too much. We don't have any instances of other amendments that went with that bill, but I just wanted to show you a quick one here. So you have your sponsors, and then the bill text of the bill. Along with that, you can see the enrolled committee substitute, the engrossed committee substitute, and the introduced version. So if you're looking to see the history of a bill and maybe bring into question what happened, the language, or trying to point out more of the intent, you can search through all of these different versions, and you just have to click on the link, and it will take you to, so this is the introduced version. You can see what it is and how it was introduced originally. But if you're looking to see what some of the changes were, then you can click on, you click on the engrossed committee substitute, and you see, it takes you there. and then you can kind of track the differences in the bills and see where it was changed, when it was changed in the process. Let me pull up a more.
There's an example.
Okay. So on the big screens, we've got some more examples of where we have the actual floor amendments and committee amendments. So these will appear on this whenever something has been submitted by the committee or submitted by members and the floor amendment. And so what you can see here is that information was available on our bill status page with each bill. Again, back to 1993. And you see on the top, it'll have the floor amendments, or on the top, I should say, above the highest information will be the floor amendments. And that will show you all of the different floor amendments that were proposed for a bill. And you can actually click on each one of those, and that will take you to the language of the proposed amendment. And we can't do that here. But then it will also have below that the committee amendments. And this is everything that was proposed. They may not have actually been enacted or not enacted, but voted up and included in the bill. But we do have all of those. So this kind of thing is available to you. Like I said, tread carefully with that if you're trying to prove something to a court about the intent of the legislature. The courts view that skeptically, so this information is available to you. And it's good to have sometimes, especially if you're trying to amend a bill. Maybe you want somebody said, we like that amendment that was done last year, but that didn't pass. We'd like to get that back in. This is all available here, so that you can find that and add that in or take it to the court, whatever you're looking to do.
So we've generally talked about the enrolled bills and the acts and kind of their status. But I just created this graphic to show you that basically the enrolled bill is sort of the pinnacle of our legal resources and what we're going to look to. It's official. The acts of the legislature are also an official source of the West Virginia Code. And our online code, Make East and West, all these things, they're not official sources, but they're there, for you. So just please be aware of what's official and what is not an official source. So our court has repeatedly held that if there's any kind of a variance between the enrolled bill and the acts of the legislature, that the enrolled bill controls. The court has also said that the acts are considered to be valid enactments, and that is generally how those are viewed. But it's always important to go back and check if there's any difference between the act and the enrolled bill. So here quickly, just going to show you how to access the acts. You're going to have instructions on how to access all these things. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through them, but the acts of the legislature is available on the state law tab. And you can see that the screenshot below is just a picture of what you're going to see when you get to the acts page. And it's got the acts all the way back, scanned copies all the way back to basically the 1863. So you'll have all of that. That's probably our most complete resource, I think, that we have. So, you've got those to use at your disposal. One thing that I wanted to point out is that there is just a small difference between the enrolled bill and the act. And that would be in the case of two bills going through the legislature and having the same section, having the same citation. So new sections, I'm sorry. Having both being the same citations being used for a new section. And the reason that might happen is because there may be two bills that are in the same subject area, and the next available place in the code is a certain, number. Like in this case, 153C1, that was the next available. So we have two bills that are of a similar subject matter. They both get put in this, they both get put with this same citation. Now, obviously, when you can't put two bills with the same citation. So the clerk has the ability and the authority to change the citations in this kind of a scenario. Again, you can also see this information in our packet, but the daily journals are also available for you. For the House, they are from 2003 forward, and the Senate, they're from 2005 forward. So you hit this bulletin board tab, and then this journal archives tab. It's kind of buried. So again, if you need directions, we've got those in our packet. The daily journals are broken down by specific year and session, and each day has its own journal. If you're looking for what happened in the recent past, you may be able to go to these daily journals and see what transpired with any kind of bill that you are researching. This is just a screenshot of what the daily journal looks like. As you can see, it's just a summary of the action that has occurred on the floor for a particular day. You'll also note that we have hyperlinked the bills or resolutions and the code sections within the journal so that you can easily navigate in it, between these resources. And I discussed this briefly earlier, but there's something else called the bound journal. Now, the bound journal is basically all the daily journals and all of some additional information for a particular year, and they're all bound together. They're one big publication. The difference between the daily journal and the bound journal is that the bound journal is a compilation of the daily journals, but it's got some other aids in it, like indices, bill action tables, and other texts, such as the appendix. So to get to those bound journals, you're going to go to this educational tab and then select publications on the drop-down menu. So as you can see, here are the bound journals for particular years. We've got about 10 years scanned. We're going to continue to get those scanned and put on the website as well, but we have about 10 years currently. Now, during legislative floor sessions, you might hear someone move for remarks to be printed in the appendix to the journal. The appendix is much like it sounds. It is additional material that is added to the official journal, and it's only available in the yearly bound journals. There's no appendix with each daily journal. So if you're looking for a member's comments on a particular bill that have been printed in the appendix, you would have to go to this bound journal, basically go to the end of any given year, and you would find these comments if you're looking for them. You'd have to go to the last volume. They're at the very end. So not every speech is included in this appendix. These are only included if another member moves that they be included. So if you're looking for information on a particular bill, you're not going to be able to find the comments on every single bill, but if something is noteworthy, it may get printed in the appendix. Another resource that we have available to you if you're looking at any kind of legislative history or what has occurred during a meeting, the Senate archives all the video from its floor sessions and committee meetings. And so to get to that archive, you're going to go to the streaming video and audio page from the main menu, as you can see here, and then you would look for the archived video link. It's going to take you there, and you will have access to all these from the Senate side. So that's a good resource if you need it as well. So.
Thank you, Ann. Just a couple more things, and we'll finish up here. So just, we mentioned it a little bit. Some things to keep in mind when you're looking at enrolled bills and acts. Renumbering does happen. It's done by the House Clerk's office. We actually, and it's okay. So like we were talking about earlier, the variance between the enrolled bill and the acts. There was a case recently where they tried to get, I think it was the syringe bill, thrown out. By one of the reasons they said was because the numbering was not the same as it was in the enrolled bill. And the judge said, no, that happens. It's a matter of course. We're not going to number everything, if there's a new section, we're not going to, we have 100 different bills all doing that new section. We're not going to do 1 to 100. We're all going to name them all number 1. And then if there are 3 passed, then we'll renumber them as needed. Something else to keep in mind, section numbers do get reused sometimes. We do repeals. There's no hard and fast rule of when those sections will be reused or how long it takes before a section can be reused, but it does happen. So bear that in mind when you're looking through a code section. You might see some older bills in the history, and you might look to those, and it might be something completely different. Well, those are often, they can be repealed, and those numbers can be reused. And then another thing to keep in mind, and this is a really random bit, but some of the enrolled bills when you're looking through, it might say a bill to amend an act and not actually amend the code of West Virginia. That's something that rarely happens, but you can, in fact, it usually happens to, I've seen it once or twice in my years here where we amend an act of the legislature. And that happens when a code section hasn't gone into effect yet. A lot of times that'll happen during a special session. So if, we're not trying to completely change what happened during session and it hasn't gone into effect yet, well, we're going to amend that act to add on to that. So that's just something to keep in mind. And then where we go from here, just want to let you know that we're working on these things. We're scanning more bills in as we get at more enrolled bills. Currently, we're going to get through that process and go back as far as we can, get everything from the Secretary of State's office and get that online and available for you guys to look at. One thing that Aaron Allred, legislative manager, he did want me to point out that all of the PDFs that we have online are searchable, so you can go in there. You don't have to read through the whole thing. If you're looking through a specific bit of language, you can search for that word and it will take you through there. So, I was actually doing some research on Code of Rules last night, and that's one thing you can't do with the rules on the Secretary of State's page. You can't just search that. You pull up the PDF, you have to read the whole thing. We do have that available. We are looking to link the Supreme Court cases that are associated with any citations. It's not going to be like Mickey's or Wes, anything like that. We're not going to provide opinions on what they say or any synopsis of what the cases are, but we are looking to do that. We've talked with the Supreme Court about that, and they think it's a great idea. So if any of you are aware of some West Virginia reports that the bound versions that you no longer want or need, we would like to scan those things in. So please, reach out to us, let us know, and we can take them off our hands. That's going to be a more long-term project. Obviously, that's a lot of work that goes involved with that, but we're going to look to do that. We're still looking to scan in all the information. We're going to continue working with the House, scan some of the journals, the bound journals in. There's also a new design pending for the website, so watch out for that. Other than that, thank you for coming here today. I also wanted to, what was all this stuff? Oh, that's just more. Sorry about that. Thank you for coming today. I do want to thank LASD, our tech people. They're the ones that have helped get the screens up and running, and that's been a big project. That's one of the new things that we've been working on to try to get this up on the big boards, make those available, and so hopefully that will this will be a good experience for the house and us in getting that, so we can use that for committee meetings and that kind of stuff. I also want to thank Aaron Allred for all the support he provides us. He makes the ship run, and we're just here, trying to help his vision through. So thank you very much for coming today.